Okay, wow. A lot of people already joined. I'm surprised. This is very impromptu, very last minute. Yeah, so I am still sort of in my pajamas. I'm not even like fully set up for the live stream. But I figured this just came up. I was, watching YouTube. I think maybe it was like Carnism Debunked story mentioned something about Leo Venus. And he's not a guy I really follow. I'm aware that he's like John Venus's brother or whatever. But not a vegan I typically like that I've followed really much in the past. And I just saw that he was saying some very odd things for someone being vegan so long. So just like caveats before we even start, like I think it's very plausible that I think it's a very plausible hypothesis that this is all some sort of like grab for attention or something like that. And I only say that again, like if I was hearing these arguments coming from like a random person on the street, I wouldn't immediately assume like there was some ulterior motive or it was like potentially bad faith or whatever. But from someone who's been vegan for so long, the quality of these arguments is so discordant with that like it makes these other hypotheses about, ulterior motives more plausible to my mind. I think I even saw Joey had a story about this where he didn't mention him by name and then he deleted the story because I guess he didn't want to breathe any more air into it. So to the extent that I'm breathing air into this story, I apologize for that. But I am going to watch the whole video, so there's not going to be any context here that you miss. So you don't have to go and like watch his video, or anything like that to get the full context. This video is just the video. But yeah, because I was looking at, let me see if we can show this here real quick. I was kind of looking at his numbers here, and let me turn this off. So I'm blue here, right? So these are my views and these are his views, and he has 43,000 subscribers. So I've actually gotten almost as many views as he has in the past month, and most of his views are coming from what it looks to be like this past video, really. And then if you look at like subscribers, he's down 212 in the last month. So I don't know if this is some grab for that or something. What's particularly weird about it is that at the end of the video, he's talking about how we should be on like social media less. And he even says how he's like getting off of social media now. So again, the whole thing is very weird. Like if you're about to get off social media, why get on and just drop a bomb like this? It seems unlikely that he's actually planning on just getting off of social media. What seems more likely is that he's planning on trying to revamp his career on social media to some degree. But that is speculation. I do not know that to be the case. But I just want to frame it that way because when we actually watch this, it might make more sense because I had absolutely no context when I just watched it, 2 hours ago for the first time. And I was just kind of like thunderstruck by again, just how bad the arguments were. And I'm not saying that to be mean. And again, like if it was someone on the street, I would totally understand these arguments. It's just very strange to be coming from someone who's been vegan for so long. So, all right, let's see. Yeah, let's just start it.
Okay guys, time for the third video. I wasn't able to film it before leaving for the mountains, so I'm just gonna film it here outside of our cabin. And today's video I know is going to be the most difficult one for most of my followers to watch, and it's going to be a video that challenges a lot of you. The extreme minority that used to give this whole movement a really bad rep has become a bigger and bigger portion. This is actually hurting the movement. So today I'm going to make the most important video I've ever posted here on YouTube, at least for anyone who is vegan and cares about this topic of eating meat or not. I think that after being vegan for over 10 years, I've come across a lot of really important misconceptions, and a lot of these I actually fell for myself, and I wish I would have known better back in the day. And so I think this is going to be an extremely useful video. Like I said, the most important video I've ever put out on YouTube. I want you to make sure that you stay until the end of this video, because even though it might get hard to watch at some points, or you might disagree with certain aspects of this video, the most important message is going to come at the end of the video. So please watch.
Translation, watch to the end so I get the most watch time so that my metrics look the best. Which, to be fair, I do little things like that sometimes in my videos. So no hate on that, but that's the purpose.
So without further ado, let's go over some of the biggest misconceptions that exist in the vegan community that I have come across. And the first one I think is going to be just from how people reacted on my Instagram when I even posted some of these opinions, which is meat is murder. Murder is actually a word that denotes the crime of killing another person. So one person killing another person, that is murder. So already from the definition of the word, we're already using this word incorrectly, which when we do so, we sound like very confused individuals. Next one, that
like, so this is like, he's just coming in hot, right? this was the point at which I was like, okay, wait, what is actually happening here? So for people who, maybe are watching this who aren't vegans and don't really understand the context here, meat is murder, right? This is a slogan that some vegans use or whatever. And I think a really easy thing, like if you want to attack any sort of group of people, rather than engaging with like the nuanced version of their arguments, the first thing you want to do is just find a slogan and attack that, because slogans are obviously inherently unnuanced. That's kind of the purpose of slogans, that they're meant to get something across very quickly, right? But even this idea that like vegans would be confused about this, obviously meat is murder is meant both as sort of a descriptive and a prescriptive claim to some extent, right? It's descriptive in the sense that vegans obviously think that meat is murder, right? We are considering animals to be someone who have a subjective experience, who have value to their lives, who value their own lives, And so killing them against their will, we're saying we view that as murder. But there's also a prescriptive statement in it that's kind of saying like, we should view this as murder. Murder should encapsulate non-human animals, right? And so that's what the slogan is capturing. It's not saying that vegans think the definition of murder includes animals, right? Like, it's not like someone was like, meat is murder, and like a vegan's like, oh my God, that definition doesn't include, non-human animals. I guess I was wrong. This is just like, this is such a weird sort of straw man, or at the very least, not a steel man, of the argument. And so that is just like, I think, really weird on the face of it. Not to mention, you can go to Merriam-Webster, I think I went to, and I immediately found a definition of murder that would fit killing animals, but does not, involve like the legal definition of murder or whatever. I think it was like wanton killing or slaughter or something like that of an individual. And so like there are clearly definitions of murder that would encapsulate animals, but even if there weren't, right? Even if there were no definitions like that, it was only this legal definition. This still is not like this. That isn't what meat is murder means. You know what I mean? We're not saying meat is murder, and what we mean by that is that the dictionary definition says it's murder. Clearly, we are trying to shape hearts and minds and convince people that there's something to value there, that the animals themselves value their lives, right? And so, yeah, I mean, I just, yeah, I don't want to get derailed too much here, but I'm just like partially annoyed that I even have to do this video. Originally today, I was just going to like edit video. I have a video that I want to come out this week about crop dust, and I think I'm actually not going to get it out now because of this. But I was just planning on just like editing today for 12 hours, sitting here in my pajamas, doing nothing but video editing, maybe playing a little like Baldur's Gate 3 before I go to bed. And then this came out, and I like feel obligated to respond to these, what are like, again, and this isn't meant to be insulting, but they really are like F-tier anti-vegan arguments. This is, I think, probably the worst one in the video. He starts off probably with one of the worst. Not that the other ones are particularly good, but this one was just exceptionally shocking.
Drinking milk is rape. See, I'm almost cringing saying this out loud, and maybe people will hear like, oh my God, what a crazy person we have up here in the mountains. No, again, this is, again, another word that denotes a crime between human beings, which is the action of forcing yourself upon someone and forcing them to have sexual intercourse with you against their own will, right, without consent. Two very violent, very traumatic, very, accepted, unethical words, unethical actions that we are mixing in with the act of eating meat. There's no wonder people who hear this think vegans are completely insane. It doesn't take a huge intellect to understand how wrong this is. I mean, think of this. If you're sitting in a restaurant and you're eating a steak, how much intention do you think that person has behind them for hurting other animals? That person is there eating food, by the way, food that is very natural for humans. This is food for humans, right? Meat is something we've always eaten. And they're enjoying a meal. They're not actively trying to hurt someone. If you compare that to, say, for example, raping, where someone is actively forcing them on someone with the intention of actually putting them through this painful, traumatic, horrible experience, and then you're going to equate the two again. It sounds completely insane. Horrible thing to do. Not a good idea if your goal is to have veganism looked upon.
Yeah, so this is something I highlight a lot. I try to call the actor-action distinction, or sometimes call it like the actor-consequence distinction or something like that. So when vegans are saying that dairy is rape or something like that, we're not saying that the person has the intent to rape a cow. Obviously, they don't. In fact, the entire reason that is like used as a rhetorical tool is to highlight to the person what the actual action is, what the consequence is, regardless of their intent, right? because we know that people wouldn't want to intend to like murder an individual, or they wouldn't want to intend to rape a cow. And so what we're highlighting is that regardless of the intent, this is what ends up happening, right? And so this is like something that I think that everyone like should have this in their mental toolkit, this idea of the actor-action distinction when talking about anything with like morality and ethics. And so like a person, like obviously an individual, right, who rapes another human versus someone who buys dairy milk. Clearly we think we're not going to imagine these two people's mental states to be equally injurious, like to other individuals around them, right? Like basically everyone, well, obviously not everyone, vegans don't, but almost all non-vegans are going to be engaging in buying some of these products. But we don't think that they have the same mentality as someone who's walking around like just wantonly raping other humans, right? So yeah, this is just I don't know how else to put it. This is just the intent versus the consequence, or the actor-action distinction here. And he's like, I think the thing is like he's mixing them up in such a way. It's like, it's hard for me to imagine he's not like playing dumb here. Like he says, you know, in the beginning, like I was taken in by all this and I was confused by it. And it just makes me wonder, like, what was his mental model when he first heard this? When he heard that, you know, people were, you know, saying that dairy is rape, and he thought that anyone who buys dairy has the exact same sort of mind as someone who is going around raping humans. Like, is that what was in his head? Like he thought that for all this time, and he's like, oh my God, wait a second. That's not like that person's psychology isn't exactly the same as this person's psychology. Like I don't even know like what he's talking about here. It seems so weird. So the other thing too is like he just slips in here, and you're gonna notice this throughout the thing, is that he'll just kind of slip in little stuff. So he slips in an appeal to tradition and an appeal to nature in there, and he's gonna kind of hammer on those harder. But yeah, so just I don't know. It's wild to me, this video already.
In a good light by other people. And the other side note as well, of course, is that eating meat is something natural. Like I said, almost every person on the planet does it. It's completely normal. So you're talking about something that almost every single person does, as compared to rape and murder, which luckily for us, a very, very small minority of human beings engage in this behavior, in this activity. Next misconception then. We used to get all of our B12 from nature, or we are herbivores. Both of these, again, are factually and scientifically incorrect. B12 you have to get from animal products in nature. I've actually looked at the research. I know some people do say this. There's a few places in the world where some natural water has the right amount of microbes during a certain season so that you can get a small amount of B12. Even then, it's probably not enough to actually get you the B12 you need. And throughout the rest of the seasons of the year, and for the rest of the world that doesn't have access to this really small, isolated sources of water, you're not going to get it from nature. And again, it goes without saying, from a scientific point of view, the herbivorous argument is completely incorrect. To disprove this, I can just ask you this question. What kind of animal who is a herbivore, when placed in nature and put on a herbivorous diet, does not survive? Because that is the case for humans. If you put a human being and ask them to survive on a herbivorous diet out in nature, we would not make it. And all the adaptations, all the anatomy and physiology supports that human beings eat both plants and animals. And I still stand behind a lot of the content that I've made here on my YouTube channel before, where I think predominantly plant-based is the healthiest option, and we should try to avoid eating too much meat, especially, of course, processed meat, but also not overdo red meat. A completely whole food plant-based diet with the right supplements. Many people can actually do well on that diet, but there is...
Yeah, so I mean, again, this idea, like, I don't think people should be running around saying we're herbivores. I don't know that maybe this is something that was a little bit before my time. I personally don't see hardly any vegans saying that. Maybe like a few if I'm on Facebook sometimes. But yeah, I do not see that as like a major vegan position that humans are herbivores or whatever. As far as whether or not you can get B12 in nature, it's just like largely irrelevant to me. You can get B12 in supplements, and you can get it extremely cheaply. And to people who are like watching this saying, well, I don't want to take supplements. The fact is you almost certainly already take supplements. There's supplements already added to milk, to bread, to table salt. You know, if you have a Monster Energy drink, there's supplements in it, a bunch of snack bars, protein bars, cereal. All these things literally have supplements added to them. So the chance that you're not taking supplements, or that you were so concerned that you avoided those things, I think is pretty slim. And B12 supplements are like crazy cheap. I think I calculated it once, and it's something like a B12 supplement costs like 35 cents a month or something. I don't remember the exact number, but it is insanely cheap, whatever it is. So everyone already takes supplements. There's nothing wrong with supplements, and supplements, particularly B12, can be extremely cheap.
is no doubt that human beings are omnivorous. Next misconception: for people who have tried eating vegan and didn't make it, they were doing it wrong. So notice just before I said, I think many people can be healthy on a vegan diet with the right supplements, myself included. I feel great on a vegan diet, and I have no problem sustaining this lifestyle. But there are a lot of people who don't, and I have experience. By the way, I used to believe this myself. I used to believe they're doing it wrong. But there are so many people who genuinely want to be vegan. They've tried again and again, and their health declines when they go on a vegan diet, which makes sense. When you put someone on a diet which is unnatural for their species, it makes sense that some people aren't going to tolerate it that well. Let's even take this logical step to the extreme and say, you know what, maybe there is a way, right? Like I used to say, there's 1,000 different ways of doing the vegan diet. I'm sure there's one way for everyone. Even if that were to be correct, even if we do entertain that possibility, do you really think it is reasonable? Do you really think it is fair for someone whose health is declining to keep trying different versions of this diet, try and fail, with no guarantee that eventually this person is going to find the vegan diet that works for them? Do you really think that is reasonable? I think it is pretty clear that it absolutely is not. So again, not everybody can be on a vegan diet. There's no data, there's no science backing that everybody can be healthy on the vegan diet. Absolutely not. This one, I know a lot of people.
Okay, so this is, I think he words this in such a way that it would allow him to sort of slip around rhetorically here. So he says there's absolutely no data that everyone can be healthy on a vegan diet. And so just for people, again, who are not vegans, there's plenty of like major health institutions that say that you can be totally healthy on a well-planned vegan diet that is going to generally include either a B12 supplement or some sort of fortified foods. And obviously, just like any diet, you want to be smart about the way you eat, right? Like you can eat shitty on a vegan diet, or you can eat well on a vegan diet. You can eat shitty on an omnivorous diet, and you can eat well on an omnivorous diet, right? From a health perspective, obviously. And of course, there's plenty of diets that aren't all plant-based that can be very healthy for you. The Mediterranean diet is one of them, right? So you can eat healthy on either one. Now, the question, the way he poses this is that there's no science showing that literally everyone, I don't know if he says literally, if he says everyone can be healthy. So the thing is, because there's 8 billion people, it's of course possible that you could find a small group of people who literally, for whatever reason, couldn't eat a vegan diet, or it would be like prohibitively difficult for them, right? Like I am imagining someone who is somehow allergic to all legumes, is allergic to gluten, is allergic to nuts, you know? I can imagine, at least in principle, a scenario that would make it very difficult to like be healthy on a plant-based diet. However, those scenarios, as I would understand them, are going to be so rare that like to even mention them as if this is some major thing is ridiculous, right? And of course, different people are going to have differing abilities to like properly deploy a vegan diet because of, you know, money or just nutritional knowledge or whatever, right? Or time. I think time and nutritional knowledge are probably big ones. But this doesn't mean that it's impossible for them. And it doesn't mean that their physiology is such that they couldn't live healthily on a vegan diet. The other thing is, just to note here, is that like vegans are going to help you with this. Vegans want to help you get your diet correct, especially if it means you're going to go back to eating animals if you don't. So like there's a ton of people, like you can reach out to, I'm sure, almost any vegan on Instagram, even probably big name vegans, who are going to be willing to help you with that vegan diet. So there are resources. There are, of course, things like Challenge 22 and Vegan Bootcamp, where you can go there and they have resources for you. You can call people. I think that they have a hotline on Challenge 22, at least, where someone will speak with you, walk you through your diet, walk you through any like trouble you're having, things like that. And they're just like endless resources. And guys, sorry, yeah. So like this is not gonna be my most polished video. Typically I like prepare even for live streams, but I'm going really off the cuff here. So if I don't have like all the references and specific things, I apologize for that. But yeah, so the point is there's a ton of vegan resources out there that already exist. And there's a ton of vegans who would be totally willing to help you if you're struggling with a plant-based diet. Again, from what I've seen, I don't see very much scientific justification for why someone couldn't eat a plant-based diet. Of course, with 8 billion people, there will always be niche cases. But, you know, again, I have seen no evidence that those niche cases make up even enough of a percent to be something that is, you know, worth talking about in the context that he's talking about it.
Will disagree with me on. Vegans are not morally superior to non-vegans. And I say this again, vegans are not morally superior to non-vegans. A lot of people will argue, oh no, meat eaters, they're animal abuse supporters. No, they are not. Most people in the world are against animal abuse. And by the way, there is absolutely a way of producing meat without animal abuse. It is just that the way things are today with factory farming is not conducive to making and producing meat with animal welfare in mind. It's just not the industrial process does not take that into account. So the actual meat in itself does not have to include animal abuse. So when you already make that jump in logic and say all meat equals murder or rape or animal abuse, you're already taking a huge logical shortcut, which ends up ultimately being incorrect. I hope you guys are already seeing some trends here. The more black and white you are about these things, the more you are going to be wrong, because we live in a complex, nuanced world, and there's absolutely a way to produce meat without animal abuse. Like I said, it's just not the way most meat is produced in an industrial farming system as.
Yeah, so this whole like thing, he does this a little bit later as well. It's just this like little rhetorical thing where you pretend like you're just being nuanced, you know, and that there are no more black and white positions. Everything is nuanced, and when someone is giving you a more black and white position, that just is some sort of cognitive or logical deficit on their part, and really everything's just very nuanced. I did like an entire video on this called, I think it's called Veganism is Too Complex or whatever, with a bunch of people kind of making this point. I think what this is partially intellectualization, which is this sort of like emotionally protective mechanism that people will deploy. And basically what it is like you get really into the weeds about a subject to avoid having to deal with it in an emotional way. And so we see that a lot oftentimes. Like sometimes this will happen in outreach, but it happens more so, I think, on like online debates where people will they'll sort of like veer off of like what's happening to the animals and then want to get like really deep into like, well, is morality subjective, or, you know, things like this, or like who's really to say what is and isn't moral, and what if like XYZ, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, this is to my eye most of the time is just intellectualization rather than an honest inquiry. Now it can be both, those two aren't totally mutually exclusive, but he does a little bit, I think, of that here. And then the whole thing of like, I feel like there's this tone he's conveying that's like, the vegan position is just so simple. And like, I just have this like much more nuanced position. But throughout this, throughout this entire video, like he doesn't really engage with any particularly nuanced positions to my mind. I mean, they're like a step past the position just as stated. But there's nothing in this video that strikes me. I don't want to say nothing because I only watched it once, but there's at least very little in this video that struck me as particularly nuanced. Now his thing is like not all animal flesh that we eat has to come from an animal that was abused. Well, again, first off, if what we're talking about is abused while they're living, then the vast majority of the flesh we're going to eat is going to come from animals that are abused on that definition. But the point is, no matter what, these animals are killed against their will. They're killed when they don't want to die, and typically at a very young age. So I guess the question is, does he consider that to not be abuse? Or if it's not abuse, does he consider it to like not be worse than abuse? You know, like if someone raised me till 2 years old and then killed me, and someone was like, let's say my parents killed me when I was 2, and the police come to arrest them and they're like, well, hold on. We gave him a really good life. We didn't abuse him in any way. And the police are like, oh, okay, you just killed him against his will. And they're like, yeah, they're like, oh, okay, sorry. We thought there was abuse here. We came on an abuse call, but that's our bad. We're totally wrong. You know, like, so this is just weird to me. But again, like the whole thing is the vast majority of animals, even on that definition, would be abused. So yeah. And I mean, even like, again, I've done videos on this too. Like even animals on these like, small local farms, which are supposed to be the height of morality and ethics, like with pigs, they still castrate those pigs without anesthetic. And I have videos of them doing this on like the absolute smallest farms that you can get. These people have like 10 pigs or something. And I even have the pig farmers saying it's like the worst part of pig farming. It's horrible. They scream like a jet engine. And the one guy is even saying like, there's no other way. If you farm pigs, you got to do this. So like, again, like even on these small local farms, I'm not buying it to begin with that there isn't like this abuse that goes beyond just the killing of them against their will. But even if we accept that this like Candyland utopia of raising animals, they're still killed against their will at a very young age. So again, I just don't know what he's talking about here.
We have in most of the world today. The other one that I got a lot is eating meat is wrong, right? It's immoral to eat meat. Meat eating is evil, all this kind of stuff, unethical. Let me go through this one real quickly. This one got a lot of attention on my Instagram. So morality, by definition, is something subjective. It is something that we humans decide is incorrect, right? We don't think...
Morality is subjective. Classic. No, I'm not arguing that morality isn't objective. It's just that typically when people bring this up, they're never about to do something that's very selfless afterwards, or advise doing something that's really selfless at that point. Like I've said before, like I don't think anyone's ever like rescued someone from a burning building, and someone's like, "Wow, you're such a great person for doing that," and the person's like, "Whoa, hold on, morality is subjective. You can't really say I'm a great person." You know, I don't think people typically bring up morality as subjective in those scenarios where they're getting heaps of praise for something moral that they did.
That any other animal has the concept of morality at all. So we have created this concept in order to separate right from wrong. Now, by definition, if this is subjective, this is going to vary. This is going to depend on who you are, where you come from, what culture you're from, what religion you're from, what interests you have, what experiences you have, what friends you surround yourself with. It is going to vary a lot from one person to the next. So if you have something that is subjective and which varies a lot from person to person, how are we going to make a standard of morality that works for everyone? Well, in a democratic world, that means we are going to go with what most people think is okay. So by definition, most people think it is completely okay to eat meat. And who are we, the vegans of less than 1% of the population? We are an extreme minority. Who are we to be so arrogant as to tell everybody else that they are wrong and we are correct? If we seriously go around pointing fingers at the masses doing that, again, we're only ostracizing, only separating.
Again, but then you could just turn this around on the non-vegans. Who are they to be so arrogant to say that they're allowed to kill cows, pigs, and chickens for, you know, a 5-minute meal? Who to take their entire life for them, to exploit them, to harm them, to chop their balls off, you know what I mean? To chop their tails off, to confine them. Like, that strikes me as way more arrogant than vegans. But also, like, I don't even know what the point he's getting at here is, because we could go back to like the early 1800s in America, and if I'm an abolitionist, is Leo going to come up to me and be like, hey, you know, by definition, morality is just what most people think. So like, slavery is okay, and who are you to go up to people and tell them that like slavery isn't fine? You know what I mean? Like if we're using this same principle that he's using here, then that's what it would lead to. And I know there will be non-vegans in here being like, oh, you can't compare slavery to animal agriculture. And again, it's not even a matter of comparing, equating, or anything. It's just a matter of applying whatever principle it is he's saying here. It seems like he has a principle that says that if a large majority of people do something, that is okay, and you as an individual are arrogant for questioning that. And maybe there's some implication that you shouldn't be questioning it. And so if that's the case, then it would just apply to the example that I just put forth, a second ago. So I just don't know what he's saying here. And this is what was so like I said, I was absolutely flabbergasted when watching this. And I think this is, like I said, Joey Carbstrong put something in his story where he's talking about, I'm not going to, breathe any air into this and give this person any attention. And, obviously I came on the other side of it. Obviously Joey also has like a huge channel, so he would actually breathe more air into this. But yeah, just so strange. And I'll kind of wildly speculate at the end why I think he's doing this, or like, I think the sort of environmental factors that might have led to this, this transition in ideology, I guess. I mean, he says he's still eating plant-based. It's unclear by the end if this is totally for some sort of ethical reasons, that he is like bringing the animals into his moral community or not. It's a little all over the place on that front, but yeah.
Only isolating ourselves and minimizing the effect that we can have on people outside of our community. Even when talking about ethics, right? Because morality is more individual, whereas ethics, from my understanding, is a more universal thing. But even again, from ethics, you cannot say that meat is unethical. You can say that animal abuse is unethical, right? Torturing animals is unethical. Again, most people will agree on that point. However, animal abuse is not a necessary component of meat. Most people do not buy meat for the animal abuse. They're not trying to abuse animals. And I do agree with you. There is a lot of animal abuse in the industrial animal agriculture system. And this is
That's good. I'm glad he agrees. That is like the vast majority of animals come from the industrial agricultural system. And again, just the same thing. Like, these animals get killed against their will, no matter what. So again, I guess if we're not defining that as abuse, then it's not abuse, but that would be strange to me to not define that as abuse.
Point I'm going to make to you. Another reason why we are not morally superior to meat eaters is because we are also causing death of animals, innocent animals, all the time when we eat vegan food, right? So
this is, I feel like this is the biggest tell for any sort of ex-vegan or, thank you, whoever just tipped me there. Why did that not come up on my screen? All right, sorry guys. I'll get to those all at the end. All the super chats and whatnot. Yeah, shit. Sorry. What did you just say? No, I blanked on it. was not something very big brained.
There is a lot of animal abuse in the industrial animal agriculture system. And this is a point I'm going to make to you. Another reason why we are not morally superior to meat eaters is because we are also causing death.
That's it. This whole like thing that like as if vegans' motivation or main message is that we are morally superior to non-vegans. Like this is something that I can honestly say this does not cross my mind hardly ever until it's brought up by a non-vegan. I am concerned about the animals first and foremost, and the absolutely terrible things that are happening to them. And just in general, the broader mindset that these animals are some things, not some ones, that allow us to perpetrate the worst sort of oppression and nightmarish conditions on them. And so like, again, it's hard for me to wrap my brain around getting into this to feel morally superior to someone. And it's something that tends to be more brought up by non-vegans who, and again, I'm speculating here a bit, but to my eye are feeling defensive because they feel like there is some sort of truth that we are expressing there, or some sort of inconsistency in their own morality and ethics that is making them feel as if they are less ethical or less moral than what they would be if they would go vegan or, you know, stop paying for these sorts of things. So that is always like I don't know, that's always just feels like a big tell to me. It also is like, as someone who is a vegan, like, is that what he was thinking? Like, it makes me feel like he has been vegan for this time because he has wanted to feel morally superior to non-vegans or something. Like, it's very odd to me. Like it just feels like a lot of these things he's telling on himself because like he didn't think about any of them like past 2 seconds. Like he just heard the argument and just like accepted it immediately. Like the vegan argument didn't like think about any of the nuance of it whatsoever. And also like maybe thought that like he was doing this solely so that he could be a better person than non-vegans, right? Like, I don't know. It's very weird framing to me. And it's not like a framing that I tend to think about. The only time I do think about it is I think about it in the sense of like trying to not make non-vegans defensive. I actually, you know, if I'm doing an outreach conversation, I go to some pain to not come across as if I feel like I'm better than them. Even though like I genuinely don't feel like that. I feel like veganism is the better choice. And so in this one particular channel or avenue of my life, I do feel like I'm making an ethically better decision. But of course, that doesn't mean I'm ethically better than someone else because we don't know what else that other person does, what other very good things they do, what other bad things I do. I don't know. Not only do I not think of it in those terms, I just tend to mostly think that it's like not a good way to think about stuff. But that's just like a little pet peeve of mine whenever this gets brought up all the time.
Of animals, innocent animals, all the time when we eat the vegan food, right? So all of the industrial...
Oh no.
agriculture that happens today, both for animal foods and for plant foods, do kill animals. Lots of rodents, rabbits, frogs, you name it, are getting killed by the millions.
Uh-oh. Is my stream about to go down? Let's see. Is stream skipping for you guys?
Every year so that we can eat our vegan food. Now, of course, it is probably quite a smaller effect, right? And we can also say, well, a lot of that food is going to the animals. Yes, correct. But the point here is that we are talking about a difference of degree, not a difference of quality. We are both doing the same things. We are both putting animal lives underneath ourselves so that we can live our modern, comfortable lives. And this includes both vegans and non-vegans. So for you to say, I don't kill animals for my diet, so I am a better person, that is very clearly hypocritical because you are also killing animals for your diet. You might just be killing less animals than the people who are eating meat. If you truly want to not kill animals, you can always...
All right, so again, I think this is something that most vegans are aware of. Again, and maybe, again, this could just be in my particular bubble and the circles I run in, but I don't think any vegans are under any illusions that crop deaths are a thing. I don't think they're under any illusions that, like, when you build a house, animals are killed, or when you drive a car, animals are killed to some degree, at least in, like, the mining of that ore or the making of the wheels or whatever it is. Obviously, everything we do, particularly because animals include insects and very small animals, is going to kill animals to a degree. Now, again, he says they're the same. So there's obviously going to be some issues here of like what exactly constitutes a rights violation. As far as like, are these, even if we were to have the same number of deaths, like, are these deaths the same? But again, I think one of the biggest important things here is that, he says, now you might be killing less, but you're killing far less. Like, it's a lot less. And so, when he says it's the same, at some point there he says, it's the same. And it's like, but it isn't the same. It's far less, like this is kind of like, to me, like, if I steal a pack of gum, or I steal someone's car, or I steal, millions of dollars from people's pension funds, in all the cases I was stealing. So it's not really a matter of like, hey, is one better than the other? We're all stealing. It's just some people are stealing a little more. Some people are stealing a little less, so like the magnitude matters, and it matters a lot. This feels like he's just going into like a bit of a nirvana fallacy. Again, he hasn't stated explicitly a nirvana fallacy here, so I'll use like the phrase he's like flirting with a nirvana fallacy. But yeah, so again, like I think a lot of this stuff, it's like, again, was Leo under the impression this whole time of 10 years of being a vegan that animals weren't killed in crop production? Was he like, did he think that whenever we like mined oil, that like we made sure all the animals were out of the way, we made sure there were no animals in like the hole that we're drilling, in the ore we're mining? Like, I just don't understand. Like, he's saying these things as like, because he's presenting them as like things that I was confused about, or things that I like didn't know and just accepted for so long. It's like, if you're 10 years in and you just understood that there's crop deaths, like, I feel like you didn't do much research into veganism. So I don't know. Someone said source of far less. Oh yeah, I mean, I'm actually doing a video on this. Right, this is the video that I was fucking editing that I wanted to get out this week, and I think I'm not going to get it out now because today was my big editing day. But it's on crop deaths, and how even when we're taking like the most industry friendly, non-vegan friendly study, like the amount of crop deaths is going to be anywhere from I think 3 to, God, I want to say 15 times. I'll have to get those for the actual thing. But yeah, 3 to 15 times the amount of just crop deaths. But that doesn't include the deaths of the animals themselves that we kill. And then it also doesn't include the sort of incidental deaths of rearing those animals. So, whenever someone's like, oh, like if you imagine this for a second, imagine that, let's say a chicken could convert crops with 100% efficiency, right? So you give them 1,000 kilograms of crop and they give you 1,000 kilograms of edible chicken. Right. Even if they converted things perfectly efficiently, there would still be more deaths in animal agriculture because let's say like there's 1,000 kilograms of edible crops and it takes 1,000 of those edible calories, right, to get 1,000 edible chicken. You would still have let's say you have 10 crop deaths, right, for those calories. With the chicken, you would have the 10 crop deaths of the calories, plus you would have the chicken death, and then you would also have all the deaths associated with rearing the chicken. So in the same way that the crops are sort of these incidental deaths associated with the farming, there's going to be incidental deaths of animals from actually raising the animals that you're eating for food. So, for instance, you have to keep rat populations in control so that they don't attack animals. Predators like coyotes and things. Sometimes people will shoot those to protect their chickens or their cows or whatever. There's also going to be, pesticides are sometimes put onto animals. The animals themselves are going to kill animals. So like a chicken walking around or a chicken or cow walking around are going to be stomping on insects, eating insects, things like that. So even in this scenario where you have this perfectly like efficient animal, you're still going to get more deaths overall by eating the animal. But the thing is, they're not perfectly efficient. In fact, they're horrifically inefficient. And so you are multiplying, the deaths tremendously, depending on how many deaths you think are caused in crops, and then also how you count those deaths, relative to the counterfactual scenario or whatever. Those studies completely ignore pesticides. Again, that doesn't matter because they're just more crops. Like anything you add in, you're like, oh, well, there's a ton of pesticides on the crops. Yeah, but it takes more crops to feed animals. So like, this is just, that's what I'm saying. Like whatever issue you have with crops is magnified. It doesn't matter if we're talking about fertilizer, pesticide, whatever. Everything just gets multiplied when you feed animals crops.
Do more. this is the hard fact that you need to face if you're going to be logically consistent with yourself, is that if you want a difference in quality and not just degree, you need to create your own food supply. You need to grow your own foods where you're not killing rabbits and rodents and all this kind of stuff. As long as you're subscribing to the industrial food system, whether you're vegan or not, you're still going to be killing animals. So again, for you to go around saying that meat eaters are murderers and the vegan is a bit...
I'm very skeptical of that claim, actually, on a per capita basis. If you were to grow all the food you need, like for a year, well, first off, obviously, most people don't have a backyard or a situation where they can do that. But even if you did, the idea that you wouldn't kill any animals is insane. Like, you would at least kill some insects, like even if totally by accident. Not to mention, you're going to be having to get some sort of like soil or fertilizer from off-site, and then you're not benefiting from the economies of scale that a large farm would. So like, you would be getting, like, you're going to have to go buy fertilizer at like Lowe's or something, right? Now, if a farmer is getting fertilizer, they're going to be getting it in these like bulk supplies, whereas you're not. And so at any stage of the game where you have this like more compartmentalization and like less economies of scale, you're probably going to be, that's generally going to be less efficient, and less efficient means there's going to be more incidental deaths associated with that thing. And so like, and I know a lot of vegans say this too, I am not convinced that like farming in your backyard alone would necessarily, I'm certainly not convinced that it would cause no deaths. I'm not entirely sure if it would cause less deaths. I guess it would depend on how deft of a farmer you are, because you have to not only factor in how many animals you kill, but how efficiently you can actually grow those crops. This is just like a kind of weird point here. I know I've heard a lot of people say that, including vegans, and it's just a point I'm skeptical of.
Good person is completely crazy, because we're doing the same things. We are doing the exact same things. It's a difference of degree. Next one then. The world one day will be vegan. No, it will not. Like I said, not everybody can thrive on a vegan diet, and it is a natural part of a human diet. We've always done it, and we probably always will. And so I definitely do not believe that the world will ever become vegan. And it's definitely not your responsibility to veganize anyone, right? It's not a religion. It is not our responsibility to spread and convert people into veganism. But we're not going to be welcomed by the vegan God into heaven if we convert more of our peers than the next person into veganism, right? It's, again, don't think of veganism as a religion. Don't try to...
Like literally, literally vegans do not think of veganism as a religion. In fact, non-vegans are constantly telling us it's like a religion, and we are combating that. So like, again, just very weird. Like, he also says, don't do it because there's no like vegan God who's going to congratulate you in heaven. So again, this is the thing is like, was he doing it in order to get some sort of like plaudits from people? He was doing it for the accolades and like the good jobs and the slaps on the ass. Like, it's just strange to me. Like, because it seems like he's saying that was his motivation. He's obviously not saying that explicitly, but in assuming that that is your motivation, or that like you wouldn't do it, you shouldn't do it because there's not going to be anyone who gives you those, those attaboys or whatever. Again, just very strange. It just seems to me, this whole video feels like he's been viewing veganism in a very strange way, in a sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Not contractual way, but I can't even think of the word. It's like when you're like, you give something, but with the expectation of something in return, transactional. Yeah. It's like he's been viewing it in a very transactional way. Like, if I do these 5 things, I'll get 5 karma points, and then I'll be rewarded for that karma by some like karmic deity or something, And again, I think it's just a weird way to go about this. Like, to me, the reason to be vegan is because we're causing so much unnecessary harm and injustice to these sentient beings. And so like, it's, it can be hard at times, but to some degree it's like an honor to be vegan. And it just feels like I have to be vegan because it's to not be vegan would be such a strain on my, like ethical consistency and my empathy and whatever else. But to be viewing veganism as this transactional thing where like someone is going to like congratulate you or tell you you're a good boy or whatever, like it just seems weird to me.
Convert people around you. You are responsible for your actions. You are responsible for your life, for your body, not for everyone else. The other argument I get as well is, it's natural, so we should rape each other and kill each other because that's natural too. I've already kind of covered that in the past in the video as well. It's kind of a 5-year-old level argument, completely silly argument. So please don't use it. Again, it makes us sound like absolute fools.
So, okay, I haven't watched this other video of his, so it could be that he has a good argument here. But I mean, first off, just being like, that's just a 5-year-old argument, right? It's very easy to like dismiss any argument by saying that, especially when you then don't provide like a reason for why it's a 5-year-old argument. Now, of course, he says he addressed it in another video, so maybe he did. But again, this is just like another common thing you run into as a vegan is a non-vegan will express a sort of principle, like it's natural, therefore it's good. Now, they don't always say it that explicitly, but it's heavily implied when they're talking about things being natural. And so they're saying it's natural, therefore it's good. The point of bringing up something like rape or murder in nature is to show them that the principle, it's natural, therefore it's good, is not a defensible principle. You can't say something is natural, therefore it's good, because we have tons of things in nature that are bad, that we would ourselves define as bad. And so bringing those things up is not a 5-year-old. I mean, in some sense, it is like a 5-year-old level argument, because it's like showing it's showing how easy it is to to poke holes in that principle, right? So in that sense, yeah, I guess it is like a 5-year-old level argument or whatever. But yeah, like, and again, he doesn't explain why this is a 5-year-old level argument, but I've heard people balk at this before, like, you can't say that, like, you can't compare the two, blah, blah, blah. And to me, it's just, these people are just intentionally or unintentionally missing the point, right? And the point is, just to spell it out again, they're expressing some sort of principle. That example disproves that principle. And so you can't just say because it's natural, therefore it's good, which means you have to move to something else, right? You have to concede that it's natural, therefore it's good is not a defensible principle. And again, this is, I think, the second time he's brought up natural, maybe the third.
Here's an interesting one. Animals have a right to life. I would actually argue more towards the opposite, even for humans, right? It's like nobody actually has a right to life when you think about it. Again, these are human-made concepts. We're all going to die. You know, if Mr. Death comes to your door and says, okay, we're going now, you're not going to say, oh, wait on a second, I have the right to life, I'm going to live forever, I can't die. We're all going to die. It's not really a right, it's more of a gift. It is a gift that we are alive, and that is why we should enjoy every second of this life as much as we can. You can even say,
well, okay, if life is a gift, then why do you want to take that gift away from other sentient beings when you don't have to? It just seems, I mean, at the very least, it just seems kind of dickish. This cow has been given this gift, the gift of life. Oh, well, I'm going to give them the gift of slashing their throat open. Like, what?
From a mathematical point of view, death is, if that is the n equals 1, then if death comes from a human being slaughtering an animal, you could even argue that death is probably a lot nicer than the death that's going to come in nature.
Again, that would only be an argument for hunting, even if we were to accept that. Most of the animals we eat are not just walking around in nature. We bred these animals into existence. So you can't just be like, oh, well, they would have died worse in nature. They wouldn't have died or lived or been tortured at all had we not brought them into existence.
Agree in the vegan community, and what most people who aren't vegan also agree with, is that we don't like animal abuse, and this is where the focus should be. This is where we need to be talking about how can we make conditions better for animals, how can we avoid the animal abuse that happens, how can we include all people to the discussion and to this change of making these environments more safe for animals so that they're not suffering throughout their entire lives. Another very big misconception, actually, I just remembered, I used to believe, is meat eaters are, number one, either ignorant or bad people. They don't care about animals. Now, believe me, because I have done this social experiment. I have shown documentaries like Earthlings, like Dominion, to between 50 and 100 people at least. And these are medical students, doctors, you know, family members, friends from all stages and walks of life, all different professions, different countries, different cultures and religions. And believe me, I think of myself as a relatively good communicator, right? I can get my point across relatively well. And after watching this documentary with 50 to 100 people, not including my family, not a single one of those people went vegan after. Do you really think it is because every single one...
Okay. First off, okay, if you've shown 50 to 100 people in full something like Dominion or Earthlings and none of them went vegan, no, I don't think you're a very persuasive communicator. Like, I've gotten my girlfriend and friend to go vegan without showing them any of that stuff. Like, that, and again, that combined with this video itself, it doesn't seem like he's a very persuasive communicator. It doesn't actually seem like he understands on a very deep level any of these points. Again, he could understand them. I don't know. He's just not expressing it here. And nothing he's saying here is indicating to me that he has a particularly deep knowledge of these things. Now, again, being that he's been vegan for 10 years and he's been in this space, it's really hard for me to believe that he doesn't have a deeper understanding, which is why I find this hypothesis plausible, that there's some ulterior motive in making this video. And I don't exactly know what it would be because I don't know this guy, but it just, something doesn't feel like it's adding up to me. Something is strange here. But damn, dude, I can't imagine showing 100 people Dominion and then I assume talking to them about it and none of them going vegan. That just seems like it seems like you're like I don't know. Are you saying something afterwards to dissuade them from going vegan? That is just crazy to me.
One of those people are evil. Once I cure them of their ignorance, would you say they are evil? Is that why they didn't go vegan? You know, again, if you're going to be logical and objective about this, I would say, you know what? We are the minority. We, the vegans, are probably just overly sensitive. Maybe we are overly empathetic. Maybe we care about animals a little bit more than the rest of the people. Maybe we are more sensitive to animal suffering. Maybe that is the case. But for you to go, again, from an extreme minority...
Yeah, so that's not me. I'll tell you, I am actually, honestly, pretty insensitive to animal suffering, I think, relative to the average person. So before, I'm more sensitive now, actually. There was like a bit of like a door that unlocked in my mind after going vegan. But prior to going vegan, like the sort of trope was, you know, that Sarah McLachlan commercial or whatever would come on with all those sad dogs in shelters or whatever. And like everyone would have to turn it off. Like I knew people who they had to change the channel immediately, or they would even start crying watching it. And I could watch it just like stone cold, like nothing happening. So I don't think that necessarily vegans are more sensitive to the plight of animals or feeling stronger feelings of empathy. At least I don't think that's me. And I tend to not think like even someone like Ask Yourself or Avi. I don't know. I think those people have said in the past too that like it's not even like a strong feeling of empathy or anything. It just really is when you step back and look at it, at what is happening. It's just such an injustice. It's such a fucking cavalcade of rights violations and suffering that you don't even have to be particularly sensitive to the plight of animals to just see it as so obviously wrong.
And say that all of these other people are horrible and terrible and evil, and we are the righteous few. I cannot get that to sound logical or rational in my head. I really can't. Yet another misconception. The longest lived human beings in the world are vegan. No, they are not. So when you're looking at most of the evidence, when we're studying the people who are the longest lived, the centenarians, all of these people who are eating both animal products and plants, yeah, sure, they do eat a lot of plant foods, whole plant foods, but it's usually also including, and it's not, you know, just 1% of animal foods. It's a significant amount of their diet coming from animal foods. So again, this idea is factually incorrect. And actually, before we had the technology that we have in the modern world and we had access to the supplements that we have, it wasn't even possible to be vegan. Now, keep in mind, when we're talking about veganizing everyone, as a medical doctor, there's the...
I don't know why people bring that up, because they're basically just saying like, yeah, we couldn't be vegan before, which again, I've read varying things. I don't have a question about this, but let's accept you couldn't be vegan before, but you can be vegan now. So like, I don't know, what's the point? He'd have to like walk that out more for me, like what exactly the claim is that's like implicit there.
Even a few reasons why I would recommend people not go vegan. Number one, if you are not actually very diligent and if you don't have at least some sort of interest in nutrition and learning where to find nutrients and learning how to be a little bit thoughtful in planning how you're going to get the right nutrients, as well as taking care to supplement regularly and consistently. If you're not that kind of person, if you're a person who doesn't really care much about nutrition, doesn't really care much about being a little bit systematic and organized about where you're going to get the right nutrients and learning a little bit more about nutrition, then I wouldn't recommend you go vegan, because you're increasing the risk that you're going to suffer from certain deficiencies, which are again only gonna put this whole lifestyle in a negative light. Same with parents with kids. If you...
So I'll agree with some of this here. Like I said, I've said this before. I think if you go vegan, particularly if you don't know a lot about nutrition, just get a multivitamin. I pretty much think like this applies to like 99% of vegans, but you should be on a multivitamin. Even people who know nutrition well, multivitamin just helps you just in case on those, you know, those down weeks when you can't eat all your kale or you can't eat all whatever food it is that, you know, maybe has some things that that you might not be getting enough calcium or whatever XYZ in. I think you should just take a multivitamin. It's like just a good safety net. It's cheap. I see very little reason not to take multivitamins as a vegan. Like for myself, you know, I did, and people have different things that they'll tend to be low in. Like when I looked at mine, I tend to be low in calcium so I don't really drink like calcium fortified milks or anything. And many of the foods I eat don't have a ton of calcium. So what I did is now I just eat more, I put kale into my diet, despite the fact that I don't like kale very much. But I also have a supplement that provides a small amount of calcium. And so, especially if you're not someone who's going to put everything into Chronometer and like look into kind of like where you're high, where you're low with things, just take a multivitamin. But again, I would recommend everyone go to Chronometer, put their meals in for the first week or two, and then maybe check back every couple months eating vegan, just to kind of see like where you're at with certain I mean macronutrients and micronutrients, you know, and just make sure you're roughly in the right range. So yeah, I think I do think sometimes with veganism, especially in this space, we really do get into the ethics a lot. And sometimes I do think we need to at least focus a little bit on the health, because we don't want people just thinking like, oh, I'm going to, like maybe if they're eating, like let's say before they went vegan, they're eating rice, broccoli, and like chicken or something. And now they're like, well, I'm just going to go vegan. And so now they just eat 2 servings of rice. So they eat rice, and broccoli. Like, obviously this isn't going to be a good health situation for them. So yeah. Now, again, I don't know if most people would do that. I don't think most people are going to like swap like that, but there are all sorts of different knowledge on nutrition. So definitely educate yourself on nutrition if you're going to go vegan. Like I said earlier, there's a ton of resources to do that. You got Vegan Bootcamp, you got Challenge 22. You can also just reach out to vegans online. They will help you or direct you to the proper resources. But again, even barring all that, just get a vegan multivitamin. Just fucking get a vegan multivitamin.
You are not extremely knowledgeable, extremely disciplined, extremely consistent, and you have a big interest to make sure that those kids are getting absolutely everything they need, I would actually not recommend a vegan diet there either. The risks for people who don't have the knowledge, the passion, and the discipline are too great. And it's not something, again, from a health point of view, that I would recommend. For people who have tried multiple times and their health deteriorates, again, I would not recommend trying a vegan diet. If you've already tried and failed, stick with the diet that actually works for you. And by the way, not even all suffering can be deemed as incorrect. We also don't have to become so idealistic that we think that all suffering is bad. I think that's also an aspect of society that I think is incorrect. Some suffering is good, and again, most people agree that animal abuse is wrong. But
okay, this is dumb. I'm sorry. Some suffering is good. That typically when people are saying that, they're meaning that the suffering is good because it leads to something else. Like, some amount of suffering may make you stronger in the future. Like a really like simplistic example here is like when you go to the gym and you lift, right? You're going to feel some pain in your muscles when you're doing that. And so there is some degree of discomfort or suffering. The thing is that suffering, it's not that the suffering directly leads to muscle growth, but when you're doing that, you get muscle growth. And so like the suffering is worth it. Also, sometimes like some degree of mental suffering will like toughen you up if you don't have too much mental suffering, of course, in which case, you'll develop some sort of trauma. But like a certain amount of suffering or of stressors in your life can actually be good long-term. That's generally what people mean when they say some suffering is okay. But this is not the suffering we're talking about with animals. This is suffering that doesn't help them, at all. Like we are causing them suffering for our own exploitative ends, knowing that we're going to kill them at a very young age. So like, I don't even know, like, I don't know what suffering of animals would even fall into this category. Like, to even bring this up is so like nitpicky. It just, again, just very strange.
if you're going around tiptoeing around because you don't want to step on an ant and you think everything is absolutely horrible, it sounds to me like you've been maybe Disneyfied a little bit too much here. You've personified all animals. You believe animals are people. That's another thing I see. Animals are not people. One more argument that I want to go over is the whole traits argument. Name me a trait that, if present in animals.
Again, obviously when people say animals are people, they don't mean people in the sense of humans. They mean that they are persons, meaning that they have a subjective experience of the world, whatever that entails. So it would likely entail the experience of pleasure and pain, the experience of emotions, potentially the experience of loneliness, the experience of camaraderie, things like that. Again, like different animals are going to experience different things. But the point is that these animals are the subject of a life. And that is what people mean when they say they're a person. They don't mean that they're like a human, if that's what he was meaning there. But again, he just blows through some of these points and doesn't really describe what it is he's claiming. Again, I think lending more credence to this hypothesis that there's some ulterior motives to making a video like this.
Allows us to do the same in humans as we do to them, right? Why are we even playing this game? Who set these rules? There's a reason why murder is a word that only denotes an action between humans, and the same for rape. There is a difference between human beings and animals. We all inherently know this. You could even say that the trait is that they are non-human, and it doesn't mean that it's fair. It's just...
Okay, so this is very weird. The whole, who says we have to even play name the trait? Again, I guess I could just do that with anything. Like, someone presents you an argument, you're like, who says I even have to argue with you about that? Again, a very weird standard. I don't think he would apply this in other areas where he was presenting an argument and someone just goes, well, I don't even have to engage with that argument. The interesting thing then, of course, is that a second later, he does provide an argument. He says, the thing is of being human. So he's kind of like, this argument's stupid, unless, of course, you don't have an answer to me saying humanness is the trait, in which case it's a good argument because then I got you. This is, again, obviously not a great argument. Name the trait. If someone says the quality is human, that would mean that if we find an island of Neanderthals or Homo erectus or something, we would be totally fine in industrial farming them, killing them against their will, chopping off their testicles, whatever. If we found a civilization of, Vulcans or, avatars or whatever. Is that what, I don't know, in the movie Avatar, they're not called avatars. I don't know what those aliens are called, but whatever. Think of any movie ever with aliens in it. And because they're not human, then it would be okay to treat them like we do farmed animals. If you want to get even like more fantasy, you could do it to elves and dwarves and whatever. There's even a movie, what's it called? District 9, I think. It's basically about that. These aliens come down, and it's like, I guess it's like an allegory for, immigration or something. And we end up treating those aliens pretty badly. But the whole point of that movie, and like you as the viewer are watching this, empathizing with the animal or empathizing with the aliens, understanding how bad what we're doing to them is, right? But I guess on Leo's view, if it really is humanness, he must be watching that movie rooting for the humans, or just being like, I don't even understand like what this movie's about. So what? They're just a bunch of aliens. They're not human. So we can do what we want to them, The non-human thing really falls apart for me for that reason, because like it would just knock the legs out of so many different movies that people watch and connect with, if the thing truly was humanness that people cared about ethically.
The way it is, and a lot of things in the world isn't fair. This is actually a cognitive distortion. This is something in psychology that we see actually causes people's mental health to decline. Believing that everything around you in the world is fair or is supposed to be fair is also a misconception. Things have never been fair. The fact that some people are taller than others, some people are more intelligent than others, some people are healthier than others, some people are born into a poor country in Africa, whereas some people are born into a rich family. None of these things are fair. World has never been fair. Life has never been fair. Nature has never been fair, and it never is going to be fair. And again, not saying that before people start doing this 5-year-old logic, does that mean that we should do everything that's unfair? Just like, does that mean we should do everything that's natural? Of course not. Have some nuance. Not everything is black and white. And above all,
okay, if it's not that, then what is then why not try to make things more fair, if that's even what we're going for here? Let's say that is the goal, is to make things more fair for animals. Then why not try to make it more fair for them, if you're not saying that we shouldn't just make things as unfair as whatever?
Focus on yourself. I am going to continue being vegan because I feel great on vegan diets. And for my individual morality, I feel like I'm closely aligned to my morals. Again, I'm not saying without killing animals, because everyone who is subscribed to the modern model does kill animals. Every single one of us.
Yep, just like every vegan fucking knows, because we always hear the crop dust argument. Like, vegans are more familiar with that than anybody. I don't know why. Like, I feel like everyone says this as if it's some like fucking atomic bomb that like vegans are going to be like, what? I kill animals? Like, I didn't know any animals died in crop production. Like, it's just so weird to me. It's like everywhere. Like, how would vegans be unaware of this? And the fact that he's vegan, has been in the community, clearly knows the crop dust argument, and is still like presenting it in this way is just, it's very confusing.
Unless you have your own little farm outside of your house and you're making sure that no animals are being killed in that process, you are actually contributing to some animal death as well. Same goes for flying cars, computers, and almost every technology you can think of. Almost every aspect of the modern world that we live in does include some exploitation of nature and animals in some sort of way. So again, we can't be completely idealistic about this. We are not as different from the meat eaters that some of us hate so much as you may think. This is, again, a difference in degree, not a difference in quality. To summarize then, vegans are not morally superior to meat eaters. Meat eaters are not murderers. They're not rapists. They're not animal abusers. Number 3, even vegans do kill animals. We're talking about a difference of degree, not a difference in quality. Number 4, human beings are not herbivorous. We are actually omnivorous, and probably the healthiest, most natural diet includes both animal products and plant products. Number 5, not everybody can
source. Yeah, we need to source for that. There's certainly omnivorous diets that are healthy, like a Mediterranean diet, but that there's like some substantial advantage to a Mediterranean diet over, like a well-planned Mediterranean diet over a well-planned vegan diet. I don't know what that data is. I mean, maybe data like that does exist. Again, it wouldn't. That to me wouldn't mean that you should be vegan, but I don't know if that's the case.
And go vegan, and in many situations, it is actually recommended, and I would personally say it's better for people to continue eating an omnivorous diet. Number 6, it is actually possible to create meat, right? To produce meat, the food that human beings have eaten and will probably always eat. It is possible to produce this without.
Again, what's the point of saying have eaten and probably always will eat? Again, weird things here. He's not saying it's okay, because he's not explicitly saying it's okay because we've done it for a long time. But there's clearly heavy implications throughout this whole video that there's like appeals to tradition here. So it's just like another rhetorical thing where, like, if you were to press him on it, he can back away. He can be like, look, I never said that just because we've been doing it a long time, it's okay. I was just pointing out that we have done it a long time. Right. So, like, again, just like a little like rhetorical, like a cutesy thing there.
animal abuse. I'm sure there's a few misconceptions I'm leaving off the table, but here is the last message, and this is the reason why I asked you to watch the whole video until the end, because this is the most important thing about this whole video.
Yeah, wait for this. It was really worth the wait. I'm so happy I watched the whole thing.
If you follow the things that I talked about in this video, if you do the things, like I said, if you're not trying to convert other people, if you try not to tell people what is right and wrong, if you just live, focus on yourself, live as a good example of a healthy, happy vegan, do the things that feel right for you, take responsibility for your own life and actions instead of trying to take responsibility for everyone else. And if you follow half of the other things that I told you about in this video, I promise you, you are going to influence the people around you to a much, much, much greater degree than you are if you're believing all of these misconceptions when you're talking to people.
So yeah, definitely another one with source. Like, just being vegan is somehow going to convince way more people than actually like trying to talk to people and convince them to go vegan. And you know, whatever else it is we might do, like pressure campaigns, outreach, all this kind of stuff. Again, I would definitely need to see a source for that. I think the, oh man, what is that book I have? I can't remember. It's something about communications for vegan advocacy. He would dispute that majorly. There's a psychiatrist who does domestic abuse, and he deals with domestic abusers, and he like attempts to rehabilitate them. And like, apparently like he has one of like the best, most validated methods of actually turning these people around. And he talks about using an assertive approach. An assertive approach, just, it's not an aggressive approach. It's not a passive approach. It's a little more down the middle, but it's like you speak very plainly about what the person has done, what boundaries they have crossed, how that's hurt other individuals, and like why that's bad. You don't call them like an asshole or a piece of shit or anything like that. But you also don't go totally passive on them and be like, it's just like everyone just living their life, right? Neither of those ways are the most effective ways to approach people, at least again in his research on domestic violence. But he's also a vegan advocate, and his position is that the same thing holds for non-vegans, is that you should be using an assertive approach with people. But again, I think this idea is just strikes me as kind of absurd on the face of it, that like the best way to convince other people to go vegan is to like not convince them to go vegan, but is to just be a vegan. And I don't know that I would listen to his track record if he somehow showed like 50 to 100 people Earthlings in Dominion and none of them went vegan. Like that's just nuts to me. Like, I feel like just the base rate in the population, like if just 100 random people were to watch Dominion, I feel like some like much higher percentage of that would go vegan from watching it. Or at least maybe vegetarian or go vegan for some amount of time or something. But like again, and maybe that happened, but based on what he was saying, like none of them went vegan at all, like not even vegan for a little bit or vegetarian or like, so like he just showed it to 100 people and they were just like brick walls, like don't give a shit
about these subjects. This is the only way that more people are going to be interested. Not everyone, like I said, never is the whole population going to be vegan. I am pretty sure about that. Never is the whole population going to be vegan, and we should not be trying to get the whole population to be vegan. But if you focus on your...
Again, I don't know what the reason would be to not be trying to get the whole population to be vegan or plant-based, either one. Like, even if you don't care about animals at all, there's still a ton of reasons to get everyone to go plant-based or as close to plant-based as they can, like, I don't know. It's just weird, right? Like, I mean, you have environmental, you have antibiotics, you have pandemic stuff. Like, there's a ton of reasons that we want the world to be plant-based. Even if for some reason you didn't think there was any ethical component revolving around animals, like, so weird. And it's like, that's the other thing. If he cares about these animals, if vegan in that way, I don't even know what vegan in that way means. Like, but then he doesn't even want the whole world to be vegan, or doesn't think we should try to get the world to, like, does he think 50%, 60%? Like, what is he thinking here? Is he just happy with how it is now? Like, it doesn't seem to make sense to me. Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's like, again, it is like speculation, but it's like, is he going for some sort of like ethical omnivore turn in his, in his content? Maybe his brother is doing better, like financially from like a non-vegan content perspective. So maybe he like is like, oh shit, I want to also cash in on that. I don't know. It's just really weird. Really weird. Like, okay, like if you're going to like cast off vegan values, or if you're going to go ex-vegan, it seems to me that if you're going to make an argument, you would just kind of pick like the strongest argument and stick with that and kind of make a really good case for that and be like, look, this is why I think, veganism doesn't work, or why I'm not convinced of maybe a consumer boycott or something like that. But like, to make your case based on so many like super flimsy arguments, is like it's just strange. Like, I don't know. Yeah, it's very weird. Like I said, I don't follow this guy, and so I didn't know much about him. So I don't have like a deep reservoir of like his content in my mind. So I don't really know where he was coming from before. But yeah, this video though was quite shocking. Let's see, we got what, a minute of this.
Yourself and the positive aspects of this. And you have open, non-judgmental, non-moralistic, high horse, you are a murderer, rapist, all this kind of stuff. You have open and non-violent, loving conversations with your fellow human beings, which, like I said, have more in common with you than you might think. Then life gets a lot better. And again, I would say, last thing but not least, try to keep away from social media, because social media is one of the worst things that have happened to mental health of humanity. And it's also one of the reasons why I think that this movement has become more and more extreme, is because we live in this niche bubble. We have the confirmation bias. We have all these people just living off of each other's opinions, right? We're building off of each other, and we're becoming more and more separated from reality. It's kind of like what I talked about, the whole, man becomes woman topic from the last video as well. You can check that out if you didn't. Like I said, I'm going to be checking out from social media probably for a long time now, focusing on some other things in life. I wish you all the best. I have nothing but love for you. Try to have love for your fellow human beings as well. Don't use
Okay, again, like, this is weird. So you make what is like a very like okay, this guy's not an idiot. He knows this is going to be an inflammatory video, right? And then he apparently just did a what is man, what is woman. So I'm guessing a video on the trans issue. Another like very obviously inflammatory topic. So he just did 2 very inflammatory videos, and then he's going to be checking out from social media. Like, what? Like, why drop those bombs and then check out from social media? It seems like you're dropping those bombs to try to like drum up some sort of, I don't know, viewership or something. It's just, yeah, I don't know. Something isn't adding up here. Something is weird.
veganism as a license to be inflammatory, hateful, and nasty towards your fellow human beings. Again, deal in love, not hate, and I promise things are going to get better. All right, take care, everyone.
Man, I don't know. Like, it's like, who is that other, there's another person, like a very, sort of like hippy dippy, like new age person that I guess is like not vegan anymore. This whole sphere of the internet, I have to say I am sort of biased against it. And I will say that outright. It's like this sort of like what strikes me as kind of vapid, airy, like, somewhat spiritual talk is like, it's not my jam, because I feel like people can just hide so much in the vagaries of it. And there's a little bit of that there. She was doing it to a major degree, but this like, also this idea of this like self-helpy, like, I'm just here to help. And like, this is just going to make you a better person and you're going to like feel better. It's like, I don't know. It adds, this is a me thing, by the way. It just adds a layer of grossness to it that like almost nauseates me when I'm watching it. So yeah, I didn't like that. I didn't like it at all. Yeah. And just like, again, I know this was a very unpolished video for me. I don't even remember what I said during this whole video. I'm sure I made some of my points, very poorly, and probably not in the most coherent way. But I'll try to rewatch it. Those were just kind of like, yeah, those were just kind of me like shooting from the hip. Yeah, I don't know. This basically screwed up my whole day and screwed up my video editing, and I'm like pretty pissed off. Not gonna lie, but I did feel like I needed to come on and just like say something about it, because I thought it was so horrific.